And the plant is so useful because you can cure many diseases like flu, like sore throat, like maybe bronchitis, coughing and all that. So that is why we made use of this pepperbark plant.
Warburgia salutaris is sought after by many traditional herbalists and muti doctors. And because of increased pressure on the dwindling natural populations of these trees, Sandparks, with sponsorship from SAPI, is working towards a sustainable future for the pepperbark and those who depend on it. With the help of the sponsor money, Sandparks is conducting a series of workshops with the traditional healers on the park's border to find a workable solution and to try and alleviate the pressure on the few pepperbark communities left inside the park.
Mr. Neary.
Oh, where to and all that shit.
Fancy meeting you here.
Yes, I say Dr. Livingston.
Dr. Neary, I presume.
Fellow environmentalist Tim Neary has been instrumental in pushing this project forward.
These trees are actually supplied by SAPI. They're taken to Skukuza nursery, and then from there they distribute it amongst the communities on the border of the park, with the idea that this in time will become the new source of pepperbark. Well, let's go see what's going on inside.
For a long time, Rosie, a medicine woman from the Bushbuck Ridge area, has been Louise Swemmer from Sandpark's right hand in getting the message across. Rosie's husband, Dave, who is also a traditional healer, helps them. It seems that the pepperbark is not the only species disappearing outside the park, which is worrying because this may very well in future also threaten those left inside the fence. The border of Kruger National Park is one of the most densely populated areas in all of South Africa. At the same time, poverty levels are extremely high here, and this, coupled with lack of infrastructure such as enough hospitals, electricity and even running water, forces more and more people to cross the fence for different reasons in their struggle to survive. Finding a working diffuser for this time bomb was never going to be simple, but gaining the trust and goodwill of the people with a project like this is a very important first step.
I got involved in about 2010, and that's when we ran our first set of workshops supplying people with the trees. And what's been nice about this series of workshops is that we've been able to follow up on some of those and see how those trees have actually been doing. And we found quite a few nice little ones that have been growing beautifully and are nice and safe, and people are able to harvest the leaves already and that's been over about a 3-year period. So that's going well. It started off small. We didn't have a lot of money in the beginning. But now this next phase, sponsored by SAPI, is fantastic because now we've rolled it out on a much bigger scale based on the experiences we learned at that first kind of pilot study, you could say.
One of the aims of these workshops is to shift the focus from the bark of the tree to its leaves.
Traditionally, people mostly use bark, which is a lot less sustainable to harvest. And there were some studies done a couple of years ago to look at the chemical components of leaves and bark, and they've shown that they're pretty much the same. And the chemical concentrations in the leaves are actually pretty much the same as bark. So based on that, we're trying to market the use of leaves as opposed to bark. And most of the traditional healers are really happy to use leaves because they understand that they're easier to get hold of, it's more sustainable, you can harvest from much smaller plants. But obviously, a scientific study that shows you that the chemical components are the same is not going to change somebody's sort of traditional cultural belief of the medicinal properties in bark versus leaves, and that's why we've asked them in these workshops, but they seem very happy to use leaves.
From the feedback at the workshops, it sounds as if only about half the saplings they've distributed in the past survived. But they haven't distributed as many as they intend to do this time, and Louise feels that there is hope.
If we get a 50% survival of these 100 that we've now distributed, that's pretty good. I mean, that means there's 50 trees out there, 50 more Warburgias out there that's helping people to be able to access the tissue as opposed to buying them from the muti hunters that are coming into the park.
David takes charge in showing the people how to plant and care for their trees, a gift that is valuable both from a practical and a symbolic point of view, and that is well accepted by the healers. One of the keys to success on a project like this is continued follow-up. Not just for the healers to understand the fears sandparks have about losing another species in the park, but also for sandparks to understand the challenges and needs of the communities who live on its borders. Because without their buy-in into the concept of conserving wilderness while they are struggling to survive themselves, the long-term future of our most important national park is really at stake.
I love the bush, but I'm not a botanist and I don't live here permanently. And that means, like most of the people in my boat, that we can only recognize maybe a handful of the trees around us. The really well-known ones, the baobabs and the marullas and the leadwoods. I have told a lot of people about this story that we're working on, and most of them have never heard of a Warburgia or a pepperbark. And like the dog in last week's story, wouldn't be able to find it even if we lead them to it. That doesn't mean that it's not an important tree. What it tells us is that we don't even know what's going on around us. We don't know where it fits into the environment. We don't know what value it has, not just to the environment, but to the people who are using it. And that is what's making this project so special. We've got this unique collaboration between sandparks on the one side, the Lowveld Botanical Garden, the Agricultural Research Institute, and the private sector, in this case SAPI. SAPI in less than a year has spent 100,000 Rand just in hard cash on trying to save this unknown little tree growing somewhere under our noses. The pepperbark is not on safe ground yet, but things are looking a lot better for its future. At the same time, it is a win-win situation, not just for the environment, but the people who use it know that they will have pepperbarks in future, if this all works out. And what we win on the other side is that at these community workshops that they're having, we are learning a lot from the people who know the trees. They act as a sort of an early warning system, telling us which of the other little unknown important trees around us are busy disappearing. And that is what I like about this project.